What if I told you that 15 US states are complete fabrications? That Wyoming has a smaller population than most city neighborhoods? That Delaware exists solely as a corporate tax haven? And that North Dakota was artificially created by oil companies? You think you know the 50 states, but the truth is, some of these states are nothing more than legal fictions, corporate schemes, and government experiments. Today, we're exposing 15 US states that don't actually exist the way you think they do. And by the end of this video, you'll question everything you thought you knew about American geography. Trust me, fact number 15 will completely shatter your understanding of how this country really works. Let's start with the most obvious fake state that's become an internet legend. State 1, Wyoming. The population conspiracy. Wyoming has a population of just 578,000 people spread across 97,000 square miles. To put that in perspective, Wyoming has fewer people than most major cities, yet it gets the same Senate representation as California with 40 million people. The Wyoming doesn't exist conspiracy theory suggests that the government maintains this empty landmass to manipulate electoral votes and Senate seats. Think about it. When's the last time you met someone actually from Wyoming? The state has more antelope than people, more oil rigs than residents, and more conspiracy theories than actual towns. Some theorists claim Wyoming is just a massive government testing ground disguised as a state. But Wyoming isn't the only state with suspicious population numbers. State 2, North Dakota. The oil company creation. North Dakota's entire modern existence revolves around the Bakken oil formation. Before the oil boom, this state was hemorrhaging population and on the verge of economic collapse. Then suddenly, oil companies discovered massive reserves, and North Dakota transformed overnight from a dying agricultural state into an energy powerhouse. But here's the conspiracy. Some argue that North Dakota was artificially propped up by oil corporations who needed a compliant state government to extract resources without environmental oversight. The state's population doubled in a decade, but it's mostly temporary oil workers living in man camps, not actual permanent residents building communities. Speaking of corporate manipulation, let's talk about America's most obvious corporate puppet state. State 3, Delaware. The corporate tax haven. Delaware has more registered corporations than people. Over 1.5 million companies are incorporated in Delaware, including 68% of Fortune 500 companies, despite the state having only 990,000 residents. Delaware exists primarily as a legal fiction that allows corporations to avoid taxes and regulations. The state's entire economy is built on being a corporate haven, with laws specifically designed to benefit big business over actual residents. Delaware is essentially a 50-mile-long tax loophole, disguised as a state where corporate lawyers outnumber farmers, and the biggest industry is helping companies avoid paying their fair share. But some states take corporate influence to even more extreme levels. State 4, Nevada, the gambling and nuclear wasteland. Nevada exists primarily to house activities that other states won't allow. Gambling, nuclear testing, and toxic waste storage. Over 80% of Nevada is owned by the federal government, making it more of a federal territory than an actual state. The government has used Nevada as a nuclear testing ground, detonating over 900 nuclear bombs in the state's desert. Las Vegas was literally built to entertain the scientists and military personnel working on nuclear weapons. Nevada's economy depends entirely on vice industries and federal military spending, making it less of a state and more of a government-sponsored playground for dangerous activities. Some states are fake because they're completely dominated by single industries. State 5, West Virginia, the coal company colony. West Virginia was literally created by coal companies during the Civil War and has remained under corporate control ever since. The state exists primarily to extract coal, with entire communities owned by mining companies. West Virginia has the highest rate of black lung disease, the lowest life expectancy, and an economy so dependent on coal that when the industry declines, entire regions become ghost towns. The state government is essentially a subsidiary of the coal industry, with laws and policies designed to benefit mining companies rather than residents. West Virginia is less of a state and more of a corporate extraction zone with a government facade. But some states are fake because they're completely empty. State 6, Montana, the The Great Empty. Montana is the fourth largest state by area, but has fewer people than most suburbs. With only 1.1 million residents spread across 147,000 square miles, Montana has a population density of just 7 people per square mile. Entire counties in Montana have fewer than 1,000 residents, and some towns have populations in the single digits. The state is so empty that it's essentially a massive nature preserve with a few scattered ranches and mining operations. Montana exists more as a concept than a functioning state, with vast areas where no one lives and nothing happens. Speaking of empty states with suspicious purposes, State 7, Alaska, the Resource Extraction Territory. Alaska was purchased from Russia for $7.2 million in 1867, primarily for its natural resources, not to create a functioning state. Alaska's economy is almost entirely dependent on oil revenue, with the state government literally paying residents to live there through the permanent fund dividend. Over 60% of Alaska is owned by the federal government, and most of the state is uninhabitable wilderness. Alaska functions more like a corporate territory designed to extract oil, fish, and minerals than a traditional state with communities and culture. The state has more bears than people in most regions, and entire areas are accessible only by plane or boat. But some states are fake because they're just extensions of other states. State 8, Rhode Island, the city-state pretender. Rhode Island is smaller than most counties and has a population that would barely qualify it as a mid-sized city. At just 1,214 square miles, Rhode Island is smaller than Los Angeles County and could fit inside Alaska 425 times. The entire state can be driven across in 45 minutes, and most of its cities are smaller than suburban neighborhoods. Rhode Island exists primarily as a historical accident, maintaining statehood despite having no logical reason to be separate from Massachusetts or Connecticut. It's essentially a city-state pretending to be a real state, with more political power than its size or population justifies. Some states are fake because they exist solely for political manipulation. State 9, Vermont, the progressive experiment. Vermont has a population of just 645,000 people, smaller than most major cities, yet it wields disproportionate political influence through its early primary elections and Senate representation. Vermont exists primarily as a progressive political experiment, with policies and culture that are completely disconnected from mainstream America. The state's entire identity revolves around being different from everywhere else, with laws and attitudes that seem designed more for political theater than practical governance. Vermont functions more like a political science experiment than a functioning state, with residents who seem to exist primarily to make political statements. But some states are fake because they're completely artificial creations. State 10, New Hampshire, the tax haven experiment. New Hampshire exists primarily as a tax avoidance scheme, with no state income tax or sales tax, funded entirely by property taxes and sin taxes on alcohol and tobacco. The state's entire identity revolves around its live free or die motto, but it's really just a tax haven for wealthy people who want to avoid paying their fair share. New Hampshire's economy depends on people from Massachusetts and other high-tax states moving there to avoid taxes, making it more of a tax shelter than a functioning state. The state's politics and policies are designed entirely around maintaining its tax haven status, not serving actual residents. Some states are fake because they're just corporate headquarters. State 11, Connecticut, the insurance company state. Connecticut exists primarily as the headquarters for insurance companies, with Hartford known as the insurance capital of the world. The state's economy is so dependent on the insurance industry that when companies leave, entire cities collapse. Connecticut has some of the highest taxes in the nation, yet provides fewer services than most states because so much of its budget goes to subsidizing corporate headquarters. The state functions more like a corporate campus than a place where people actually live and work, with policies designed to benefit insurance companies rather than residents. But some states are fake because they're just military installations. State 12, South Dakota, the missile silo state. South Dakota exists primarily to house nuclear missiles and military installations, with more missile silos than major cities. The state's economy depends heavily on military spending, and vast areas are restricted military zones where civilians can't go. South Dakota's population is so small and scattered that it functions more like a military territory than a civilian state. The state's politics and policies are heavily influenced by military contractors and defense spending, making it more of a Pentagon subsidiary than an independent state. Some states are fake because they're just tourist attractions. State 13, Hawaii, the resort chain state. Hawaii's economy is almost entirely dependent on tourism and military spending, with very little actual local industry or agriculture. The state functions more like a resort chain than a place where people actually live and work, with most jobs serving tourists rather than residents. Hawaii's cost of living is so high that many locals can't afford to live there, and the state imports almost everything from the mainland. Hawaii exists primarily to serve as America's tropical vacation destination, with policies and development focused on tourism rather than creating a sustainable economy for residents. But some states are fake because they're just government experiments. State 14, Utah, the religious corporation state. Utah exists primarily as the headquarters of the Mormon Church, which owns vast amounts of land and businesses throughout the state. The church's influence on Utah politics and culture is so complete that the state functions more like a religious corporation than a secular government. Utah's laws and policies are heavily influenced by Mormon doctrine, and the state's economy depends significantly on church-owned businesses and institutions. Utah operates more like a theocracy than a traditional American state, with religious leaders wielding more influence than elected officials. And finally, the most shocking fake state of all, State 15, Washington, D.C., the corporate government. While technically not a state, Washington, D.C. operates as the ultimate fake state, a corporate entity that exists solely to house the federal government and lobbying industry. D.C. has no real economy beyond government and lobbying, no actual representation in Congress despite having more residents than Wyoming, and exists primarily to serve corporate and political interests rather than its residents. The district functions more like a corporate headquarters than a place where people live, with policies designed to benefit politicians and lobbyists rather than the 700,000 people who actually live there. D.C. is the ultimate example of a fake state, a place that exists entirely to serve power rather than people. Conclusion: these 15 states reveal the truth about American geography. Many of our states exist not as functioning communities, but as corporate tax havens, resource extraction zones, military installations, and political experiments. They maintain the facade of statehood while serving interests that have nothing to do with the people who live there. From Wyoming's suspicious emptiness to Delaware's corporate puppet show, from Nevada's nuclear wasteland to Utah's religious corporation, these states expose how American geography has been shaped by corporate and government interests rather than natural communities and cultures. The next time someone talks about the 50 states, remember that many of them are just legal fictions designed to serve power rather than people. The map of America isn't what it seems. It's a corporate and political construct disguised as geography. Which fake state shocked you the most? Did we miss any obvious corporate puppet states or government experiments? Drop a comment and let me know what you think about these geographical conspiracies. And if you want to discover more hidden truths about American geography that nobody else will tell you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Trust me, we're just getting started exposing the lies hidden in plain sight across America.